How's it going, rail fans and model railroaders? James here with Boulder Creek Yard, and I am finally done. Well, not done here anyway, but I am finally done with the fall part of the Four Square Seasons diorama build. So let's get into it. So as I explained in the other videos, this is basically going to be 4 1 square foot sections of diorama build dedicated to each season. Hopefully kind of easily feathering into the next one. And currently, now that fall is over, you're going to get to see the fall video. I tried a couple of new things, learned a couple of new things. It worked out pretty well. As you can see here, I'm trying to draw on the dirt texturing that I have on here. It kind of worked out. Kind of not. I think it was more effective to just use the eraser to mark out the sections of everything that I wanted. So I'm going to go ahead and save you the bore of watching me mark on this on things that you can't even see, and we'll cut to the next scene. So the roots that you see here are ones that I got outside. I believe these are from a Scotch broom or French broom bush, and basically what I'm going to do with these is they're going to stick through the side of the hill as, say, the embankment's starting to wash away and the roots are starting to get exposed. One nice thing about a diorama is I can take the whole diorama, flip it on its side, and then attach these with just regular white glue. Makes it really easy. I was thinking about how you do this with a regular layout, and all I can think of is just having to use super glue, which I didn't want to do. Sometimes to get the actual roots to kind of stick up a little bit more, you got to do something like put a little pencil behind it. I found that ends up creating the perfect amount of spacing to kind of make the roots stick out from the side. And as I go along, I like to put a little bit of dirt texturing on the glue spot. I didn't actually see what it would look like without doing this, but it kind of blends in the roots very well when you're done with them. So as I mentioned earlier, I wanted a trail to kind of go through this section, a little game trail for deer to walk down. So I just kind of follow the lay of the land and kind of scratch the trail in with the eraser head. Now it kind of seems like you're just going to get a lot of eraser shreds, but really you don't end up getting that many. And I figure while I'm at it, why not do the winter side of the trail? And now we're on to a step that I love and hate. It's time to do the static grass. So for this, I'm going to be using some fall colors of the Woodland Scenics flocking grasses. You have straw and just burnt colors. And I'm also going to be using some of the Scene Masters from Walther's Mixed Weeds Long and some of the Mini Nature static grass. I've also been using the Woodland Scenic Static Tack glue. It works a little bit better than Mod Podge, but that's likely only because it's thinned in a certain way. Once I run out of this bottle, I'll probably just end up making it. So we're going to go ahead and give this a little bit of a mix, not too much in my opinion. That way you get kind of clumps of darker and lighter. And now the tip of the day. Make sure to turn on your static grass applicator, otherwise you're just going to dump a whole bunch of static grass flat on the surface. If you catch it quick enough, all you got to do is just start applying grass again, and it will kind of pull that static grass up. So I finished some of the static grass off camera, but then I realized I also have to lay down the track. If I don't lay down the track now, it's It's going to make it a little bit harder to know where I want to end the static grass that's on this camera side of the track. If I don't lay it now and I go down to put down ballast and it's too close, I may end up with a lot of ballast in the static grass and it just becomes a pain. So this is some really old Shinohara track that I have sitting around, and it's got these kind of weird tie ends that don't show up on any of their newer stuff, so I gotta clip those out and I'll just slide in regular ties from somewhere else afterwards. So as always, my track adhesive of choice is Liquid Nails Project Adhesive. I like it because it does a really good job of holding the track to the Walther's foam bed that I use, and it's also not water soluble, so when you put on the ballast glue, it doesn't loosen your track up like if you used regular school glue or something like that. Then once I have the track in place, come in with the Woodland Scenics foam nails or whatever you want to use, weights, etc. And we're just going to tack this down until the adhesive is nice and dry. While I wait for the adhesive to dry, it's time to bring in some of these Mini Nature static grass tufts. So these are basically just glue and static grass on a mat that's already done for you. I bought this just to speed things up a little bit, but it ended up looking a lot better than when I've tried to make these myself. It might just be a practice thing. And now that the project adhesive is dry, it's time for some ballast. Except right about here, I realized I messed up. I haven't painted the track in any way. Oops, time to vacuum that all up. So the colors that I'm using are Vallejo Model Air. And despite them saying that, these are ready to go right out of the bottle for an airbrush, I still like to put in a little bit of flow improver. So after getting the base coat down, I darkened up the paint a little bit and came back through and painted the section in between the rails a little bit darker to kind of signify some oil drips and whatnot. So this time, instead of using my normal Woodland Scenics track weathering pens, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try putting the rust coating on the tracks with the airbrush. So I take off that little tip to make the nozzle a bit finer, and I'm going to spray on some rust color. This is quite a bit of work for what is only marginally better looking track. I think in the long run what I'm going to end up doing is testing out a couple of more ways of doing this type of painting to see if I can make it a lot more efficient. So now I'm finally ready to ballast. One of the things that I did off camera was I hit the rails with some dull coat to kind of seal in the acrylic paint, as I don't know how well it's going to react with the ballast glue that I use here. Then I also rubbed a piece of wood across the top of the tracks, and that got all of the paint off really well. The ballast that I'm using here is Arizona Rock and Mineral Union Pacific Gray Blend in the HO size. This is not the mainline stuff. That stuff is too much like a boulder, so I'm just using the regular branch line stuff. So I decided to try something new here with using these syringes instead of droppers, and I don't like it. It's kind of really hard to control how much of the alcohol or the glue that you're putting out, and you end up with much bigger drops or sometimes even washing away the ballast completely. I'll probably be switching back to regular droppers, but I need to go buy some before I do that. Alright, so now that the ballast is down, we're going to move on to actually doing the scenery in front of the tracks. You can see some staining there from the glue that I used. I used a Scenic Express matte medium instead of my normal Mod Podge, and it leaves these really weird puddly spots that you can see once it dries. But once you cover it up with static grass, it's not really that big of a deal. So over here on the back side of the tracks, underneath the embankment, I'm basically going to just put my scenery grass on either side of the lowest spot here in an attempt to make kind of a ditch that signifies like standing water there throughout the winter. Since this is late fall, it's going to be dry right now, but there's going to be a couple spots that have just a little bit of water in them. The area that's in the ditch is actually going to have just mainly leaves for the fall season right now, and some of these little tufts of grass or weeds. Since these are so big, they're going to kind of represent some water grasses. So now that we have all the grass down, it's time to put in the Scenic Express Super Leaves. This stuff is from Scenic Express, as I just said, and I'm pretty sure it's actually made by Knock. But it's really fine leaf foliage, and it's usually made for their Super Trees product, but you can go ahead and put it on any tree you want. It does look a lot better, in my opinion, than some of the foamy style, depending on what foliage type you're going for. So we're just going to build up some layers with these leaves with various different colors. In my research of aspen tree areas, it didn't look like there was a whole lot of leaf litter on the ground, so I'm just going to kind of finely spread some on the ground. And also, to go with the leaves, I want to put in some bushy bushes, as weird as that sounds. So I'm using Woodland Scenic's early fall foliage. This is really meant to go in trees, but it also does a really good job when clumped together of representing bushes and brush on the ground. I'm intentionally going a little less dense on this diorama than I did for my NMRBO diorama background. I want you to kind of be able to see through the trees, unlike on the other one where it was just very dense in the back. So now it's on to tree time.
No, not tea time. I said tree time. Where I'm going to be putting in some Scenic Express super trees. I had looked around for some aspen trees to see if I could find a better version of those in HO scale, but anywhere that I looked was all back ordered. So I just ended up using the regular super trees with a little bit of black paint on the stems to signify those black marks that you get on the quaking aspen. This section of the video also gets a cameo by my modeling sweatshirt. As you can see, the entire arm of my sweatshirt is covered in that Project Adhesive liquid nails glue. So I didn't have quite as many trees as I thought I did. So I got to be a little bit more methodical about where I actually place them. And I don't think I'm going to actually end up gluing them down right now. I'll probably do that once the winter section is done, because my thoughts on this are, if I'm going to be working on the winter section, I want to be able to reach over things. So I'm going to take a photo record of where every tree is and then probably label it, and that way I can take it out while I'm actually working on the winter section instead of just breaking the trees. So, with a couple more greebles added off camera, I think I'm done. As you can see here, I've added some deer and some more roots. I had to hide the deer behind bushes because my 3D printer decided that they were all quadruple amputees. So they're kind of propped up there a little bit in the grass with no legs. So don't look too closely. You can also see a little bit of the water effect that I put in there. It's not too noticeable. I may go back over it and highlight it a little bit more, but I'm satisfied with where it is right now. And since this is a model railroad diorama, here's the diorama with a UP C45AH locomotive. Thanks for joining me on the 4 Square Seasons diorama, part fall, and up next is the winter part, or part winter. I apologize for this taking so long. I did not factor in the holidays or getting sick or any of that fun stuff. So hopefully the next one's out a lot sooner. Thanks for watching. Boulder Creek Yard out.
While I wait for the foam to dry, it's time to put down some of these mini nature foam tufts. Grass tufts, something tufts.